to be a good mom, to be a good boss, to be a good wife, to be a good daughter, to be a good friend. And so you try to satisfy everybody around you, but you forget yourself.
Welcome back to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. My name is Reika and I'm your host. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. And if you are a returning listener, thank you. Thank you so much for keep coming back every week. This weekend was a very full weekend for me, full of gratitude and appreciation for the community that I have built over the years. I had a lot of events this weekend. So on Saturday, I celebrated online celebration of my 4-year anniversary of the online yoga studio. And on Sunday, which is the day I'm recording right now, we celebrated the 4-year anniversary for my online yoga studio in person. And I hosted a yoga and sound and cacao event out in the park. It turned out to be such a beautiful day and so many of you came. It was so nice to see everyone. It was so nice to connect in person, practice yoga, drink cacao that I brought back from Peru as we share our gratitude. Just everything was so wonderful. I just cannot express how grateful I am for my community. So whether you've been with me since the beginning when I was a newbie yoga teacher, whether you've been part of my online yoga studio as a member, or maybe you just came to drop in one day, or maybe you've been into my yoga class in the past, or maybe you just know me from afar from this podcast or through my website, Instagram, newsletter. Wherever you know me from, I am grateful for you. So thankful for this community, and this weekend has given me so much fuel to keep going as a yoga teacher. I mean, I love what I do, so my job doesn't feel like job. I just love what I do, and I'm very grateful that I get to say that I love what I do. But just, being around community and celebrating together has been just another beautiful fuel and push that I needed to keep going. So thank you for everybody who came or who messaged me. Really appreciate you. I don't have a lot of housekeeping to share this week. Only thing is that I'm grateful for you and for this community. We just finished the workshop that was taught by Brittany on the art of teaching private yoga, and that workshop was so amazing. I learned so much, and we all learned so much from Brittany. She just has so much wisdom and experience to share. So we learned so much. So thank you, Brittany, for coming on to do this workshop. We really appreciate you. For this week's podcast, I interviewed Claudia, and Claudia and I met in person when I first came back from Peru, and I started teaching at a new yoga studio called Live Meta in Laguna Beach. The studio is not new, but the new location that I started teaching since I came back from Peru, and that's the studio that I am going to teach a 200-hour teacher training, Smart Flow teacher training early next year with Shanti. And I met her the first day I went to the studio to teach. I was a little bit nervous. You'll hear me talk about it in the beginning of the interview, but I was a little bit nervous coming in just because it's a new location, new place that I'm teaching, and I'm teaching a class called Smart Flow, and not many people know what Smart Flow is. And Claudia walks in and she said, "I know Smart Flow. I'm YogaWorks trained, and I know Annie Carpenter." And as soon as she told me that, I felt so much more comfortable. I don't know if you ever feel this way, but whenever I meet a yoga teacher who has similar teachers, similar lineage, or we share the same school of thought or school of yoga, I feel a little bit more comfortable, and I feel like I have an instant connection with teacher like that. So that's kind of how I felt when I met Claudia. Even though she's from Germany, just by us having common teachers, I felt like we knew each other already. So it was such a pleasure to have her on, interview her for this podcast. And I think she brings such an interesting and eye-opening point of view of teaching yoga, being a full-time yoga teacher in Germany. So thank you, Claudia, for coming on to share with us your journey, your stories. So let me introduce you to Claudia, whose journey has always centered on movement, both physical and mental. With a background in leadership, she transitioned to full-time career as an ERYT 500 yoga teacher and educator, specializing in physical and mental health, stress management, and mindfulness. Claudia's teaching emphasizes personalized alignment, rooted in her belief that yoga should adapt to the person, not the person to yoga. Certified by German Health Insurance, her course supports students on their path of growth and self-connection, something Claudia sees as a lifelong journey. So here's the interview and conversation I had with Claudia, and I'll speak to you on the other side. Welcome, Claudia, for coming to join me on the Full-Time Yoga Teacher podcast. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you today. So, a little bit of backstory. I recently started working at a new studio. A studio is not new, but for me, it's a new location I started working at, which is called Live Meta in Orange County. And the first day that I went in to teach a Smart Flow yoga class, that's when I met Claudia. And Claudia was like, I know Smart Flow, and you knew a lot of my teachers. You knew about Annie Carpenter. You knew about Joan. You knew about Yoga Works. So I felt very, almost like it was my first day. So I was a little bit nervous going in to teach there. And I felt really comfortable. Almost there was this like big sigh. Like I was like, oh, I'm so glad somebody who knows Smart Flow is here, because I knew you appreciated the practice of Smart Flow. So I feel like I didn't have to prove it to, people who already know about Smart Flow. But sometimes when I go in to teach a Smart Flow class at a place that nobody knows what Smart Flow is, I get a little bit nervous of like, how are they going to receive my teaching? But anyway, so I just want to share that. I'm so glad that I got to meet you that one day in one class. And it was so fascinating that you knew a lot of my teachers and, where my teaching come from and who I get influence from. So that's just a little backstory for the listeners. So Claudia, I'm so glad we get to have this conversation. Please tell the listener, where are you joining this conversation from today?
So I'm based in Munich, Germany, and I'm very happy, Rika, that I have the opportunity to do this with you today. So I'm more or less on the other side of the big ocean. Yeah.
And is that where you're from, Germany?
I'm from Germany. I was born and raised in Munich, so I still live nearby. It's a little village on the south of Munich. My parents still live there where I grew up, and I never really left town because I think I live in the nicest place you could live in Europe.
That sounds nice. And it must be getting colder right now as we speak.
It is autumn. It's autumn. It's already dark. So you're in the middle of the day. We are already beginning into the evening. It's getting dark. So it's a typical autumn. It's starting to fall leaves. It's gray. It's cold. It's raining. So, but it could also have great warm days. We are still in the middle of Oktoberfest. I think everybody knows this, which ends on Sunday after 2 weeks. And this year they are not so lucky with the weather, unfortunately.
And please share with us, the listener and myself, why were you in Laguna Beach when I met you, when I first taught my class in Laguna Beach? So what is the connection for you with Laguna Beach and Germany?
Okay, so Laguna Beach, there lives a friend of mine. I know her for since over 30 years, and she's like my soulmate. So she's 75 years old. She's like my mom. For my kids, she's like a second grandmother. and we are just friends. And she's taking care of her mother, which is 94 years old and a bit dementia. And so she's not able to travel. And this is the reason why we try to travel and see each other at least once a year. So that's the reason why I come there, and I love it. For me, it's like a second home too. It's like, for me, it's like coming home. That's true. I know California very, very long. So my first time I was there was in 1991 with my parents, and I just fell in love with it. And so a few years later, I met Renee, who is really, as I said, she's like a soulmate for me.
Oh, that's such a, sounds like such a beautiful friendship that you have. And it's so nice that you make time to see each other once a year. I just came back from Mexico, visiting my best friend who lives in Mexico. And I get reminded every time I see her or, you know, my close friends who live very far away from me. I get reminded how important it is to make time to see each other once a year or twice a year, or, you know, however many times you can. It's just so important to maintain that friendship and relationship, I think.
It is.
Mm. And how long do you usually visit Laguna Beach for every time you come?
So we stay there between, it depends on the time, how long we can go, but it's always between 2 and 3 weeks. This is what we try to do. And we always do the same stuff there around. So it's nothing new, but it's always like, great. I love it. I just love it. My kid loves it too. So that means it's approximately 2 to 3 weeks. That's during summer break when my kid is on vacation.
Nice. And do you always go practice at that particular studio, Live Meta, every time you come visit?
No, in former time it was Yoga Works, because Yoga Works was I made there my 200-hour training. So in former times, the Laguna Beach studio was Yoga Works, and there was no one in Laguna Niguel. And I met one teacher 10 years ago, I would say, and I just was happy about his teaching. And this is what I always tried to find him. And he's now on Life Matter. And this is why I came to Life Matter too. So last year, the first time, I hadn't been to California since last year, the first time after 6 years. So we had been traveling for 6 years to California because of the pandemic and stuff like this. Yeah. So he's the reason why I was on Life Matter.
And that brings me to next question of, you said you did your 200-hour teacher training with Yoga Works. So tell me which Yoga Works was it? How long ago was your 200? And what made you decide to do your 200?
Okay, that's, I would say that needs a little bit of background why I decided to do a yoga teacher training. But I did it in Munich. So nearby Munich, there was a yoga studio. They worked together with a lot of good teachers, and they offered, I think, 5 years in a row together with the Yoga Works, yoga teacher training, 200 hours training. And that time it was Erica Trice. So she came from, she's based in San Francisco, and she came to Munich, and there was a full month. It was a full August every day. I think we just had been off on Sundays or something from in the morning, 7, 8 o'clock until the evening, 7, 8 o'clock. So that was a tough time, but it was the game changer in my life, to be honest.
Was Yoga Works big in Europe?
No, not at all. So there was just the connection between this yoga studio and Yoga Works. And so I think my former teacher, so Nella, she made her teacher training in the US, and she had connections. I think that was the connections going back to Yoga Works. There had been a few people in Europe that taught the Yoga Works for Yoga Works. And so Erica came to Munich. I don't know exactly how this connection came, but it was my luck. I was lucky that I could do this.
And how long ago was your Yoga Works 200 hours?
in 2014. So it's 10 years now.
Okay. You probably know this, but to the listeners that I'm also YogaWorks trained, both 200 and 300 with YogaWorks. So I think wonderful about meeting other YogaWorks teachers around the world is that we share the same type of teaching or styles of teaching, or maybe like how we value certain part of teachings, as well as yoga and cueing, sequencing. And I can always tell when I take a class that with a teacher who have YogaWorks trained, or maybe they were trained under YogaWorks teacher or some kind of connection with YogaWorks. I can kind of hear in their teachings and cueing and sequencing. And it's almost like it's very heartwarming. It's very comforting to whenever I take classes from somebody who is YogaWorks trained or who's like have influence from being taught or practice around YogaWorks trainers. So wonderful to hear that they're also YogaWorks presence in Europe. And I know there's some YogaWorks presence in Asia as well. I know they used to go do teacher trainings in Asia, which I think it's pretty cool that they're kind of all over the world. And then the question I had was, did you start teaching yoga right away after your 200-hour teacher training?
So I started to teach it, but I just wanted to do the teacher training for myself, dive deeper into the whole thing. And I never meant to teach yoga. But there had been a few friends and I said, hey, you made the yoga teacher training. Why don't you teach us yoga? And it was more like a fun thing, but it started quickly. So a few months later, it started quickly that I had at least one class, and I started with 4 people, 5 people. At the end, it had been 15. And then I had a second class, and this is what I just did besides my normal job. But I really loved it. It was like, it made my week to teach yoga. It was the best thing in the week.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what was your job?
My job. Mm-hmm. So I was working for an international company in the travel industry, and I was in a very responsible full-time management job. So, and the same time, so when I was like in a long distance relationship, and this is what I have to tell a little bit before why I started to use to step into a teacher training. So I had really bad back pains. And at this time, I didn't understood the connection between back pain and stress and stuff like this. And to be honest, that led me into my first burnout in 2005. So I knew that I needed to change something in my life and to reduce stress. And I have heard that yoga will help you reduce stress. And the fun thing was that a hatha yoga class was offered in the neighborhood just next door. So that's why I signed up and was there for 7 years. So I was with the same teacher for 7 years. And at the end, unfortunately, she fell in and stopped. And then we had been a yoga group without an instructor, without a room. So that was how I started yoga. And then I met Nella. So the teacher I told you, she made the teacher training in the US. So it was like a chance, that she returned from the US and she wanted to settle back in Munich. And so she was recommended to us. And we said, okay, we need a new yoga teacher. So, and she was more or less the start for the whole thing, because though I took 7 years of yoga classes, with her, it was the first time that I had the feeling what yoga really means. But she's also YogaWorks trained. So she made the 500 hours in Santa Monica with Chet Hamron. Then, that was a few months later, we had been to the same time. So it happened that we had been at the same time in California. I was visiting my friend, Renee, and she took some workshops there with Chet. And she convinced me and said, hey, when you are there, you have to come to Santa Monica, to the studio, and join me for a Saturday morning class with Chet Hamron. And I said, wow, okay. And my friend, so Renee, she drove me up from Laguna Niguel to Santa Monica, because I was always scared to drive the LA freeway. So she she took me up that I was in time there. And I cannot say what happened during this 90 minutes. It was like, I don't know, it was like flipping a switch. I was totally exhausted on the one hand and inspired on the other. And at the end, I was so courage enough to drive us back to Laguna Niguel. And my friend said, really? Because I didn't drove for years. It was like, since this, I'm driving there. So as I said, I cannot really explain. Then we came back home and Nella said to me, wow, Chad will have an immersion in Munich for 4 days. And it would be a great opportunity. You should go there. And I said, I cannot go there. There are again, some yoga teachers, only yoga teachers. And we spend so much money on vacation. And how should I finance it? And all the stuff like this. But nevertheless, so I was torn back and forth and signed up. And this immersion set a lot of motion, so both physically and mentally. And I had the feeling like being completely clear in my mind. And now when I look back, I really understand if you say yoga transforms. So, and at the end of the immersion, there was another non-teacher. So we had been 3 in the class, only teacher and we 3 non-teachers. He said, oh, we will see us at the 200 hours training. I said, for sure not. So I started to listen again, all the reasons that spoke against it. So I don't have more vacation. How should I tell to my boss? How should I finance it? What should I do with my little daughter? Stuff like this. But at the end, it left me no peace. So I wanted to dive deeper into the whole thing. And all those obstacles were quickly removed. And a few weeks later, I found me in the YogaWorks teacher training with Erica. Wow. That was the beginning of the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, it almost sounds like it was meant to be, that you were supposed to get introduced that way and get really hooked in and then sign up for teacher training. And it seems like it was really meant to be. That sounds amazing. And I'm curious about, after you finish your teacher training, you said you work for tourism. How did you slowly transition to becoming more of a teach more and then less of your other job?
Yeah. So as I said, when I finalized my first teacher training, so I went back to my job and my previous life. And I always had the feeling that there's something wrong. So that there's something it's not okay. And to be honest, so the truth is I was very successful in my old job. I had a great reputation, but the last years I just hated it because I didn't see any sense in what I was doing. And I became dissatisfied with every day. So more and more. And as I said, the only happy moments I had when I was teaching my yoga classes besides the rest. And 1 year later, I started then the 300-hour teacher training, unfortunately not with YogaWorks because they didn't offer 300 hours in Europe. But Nella, so she started to do yoga teacher trainings. She told me there's a really good teacher in Germany who is very well educated on alignment, anatomy, philosophy. So all the things we learned at YogaWorks teacher training. And so I started with him for 2.5 years and did another yoga therapy training besides my job. And the problem was that in the early 2016, my back pain came back. Though I did yoga and meant to know how to reduce stress, but it was in such an intensity that I really cannot describe. So after 8 months of all kinds of therapies, there was no improvement. And at the end, my doctor, she told me and she asked me, she doesn't see a physical problem and asked me if I ever thought about changing my life. And then she just put me on sick leave. She said, you have to go out of this because otherwise you will never recover. And I was in so much pain. I was so depressed. And I finally understood that I was again in the middle of my second burnout, which was like unbelievable for me because 11 years before. And then again, also my whole family, my environment, especially my former husband, they couldn't understand. And they thought, oh, give her a break of 3 or 4 weeks and then she will be back on track. But I still was in the yoga therapy teacher training. And the third module was about mental things. And that opened my eyes. For the first time, I really saw that I was living a lie in my own life and how much I was wasting, I would say, my talents, and my soul had to do something that I really hated. And I knew in this moment, I will not be able to go back into my job. And in this moment where I just informed my family, my husband, everybody said, I will not go back. It's nice I'm on sick leave, but I cannot go back. And it was like my pain was gone. It was like it was over after all those years. And everybody was a little bit concerned about what will she do. So I needed nearly 1 year to recover of the whole thing. And then I quit my job. And for 7 months, I was unemployed, but I had the really great luck to be accepted into a business coach and training program through the employment office. And we got a lot of coachings there. And my question was always, can I be self-employed? Can I be a full-time yoga teacher? And everything said yes, yes, yes. So after those time, it took me another 3 months to set up everything you need for a business, to being self-employed. And then it took me another 3 months to had a full-time schedule class, and I was able to pay out my first salary. Of course, I downgraded all unnecessary expenses to make room for a smaller salary. But that was the beginning, how I started. It was like not thinking it over. It was just like, go for it. Now you have the chance. And additionally, I started a training to become a specialist consultant for stress management and burnout prevention, which helped me to understand my own story, of course, and also helps me nowadays in my daily work with my yoga students.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. I have a lot of follow-up questions from that. But first of all, I want to say I had a goosebump when you said that as soon as you told your family, hey, I'm quitting this job, it's not right for me and I'm going to follow my heart. And that's when the back pain disappeared. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow, because you hear a lot of chronic pain is not only physical, but a lot of it is this emotional. It's connected to our emotional state and also like energetical and all of that thing. So that story gave me a goosebump of like, as soon as you said, I'm quitting, the back pain was gone. I mean, that just sounds so amazing. So you said you were in a yoga therapy program. So I do want to ask a little bit, I have a lot of follow-up questions, but First one is yoga therapy program. How long was your yoga therapy program? And do you do more yoga therapy work now, or do you teach more group classes? Like, are you using both? How did that yoga therapy program lead you to the offerings that you have now?
So the whole program, it was nearly 1.5 years. It was split on 3 modules. So the one was the anatomy. The other one was the physiology, and the other one was the mental thing. And that was a real, I would say, heavy program, but a real good one. And I teach a lot of students who have physical and mental issues. So I'm very deep into this. I understand we cannot heal them, and it's not my job to do this. I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but I think I understand bodies quite well, and also the well-being of the mind. And this is what I use. So I have a lot of private students coming to me, and we are working on their specific issues. But I also teach group classes, and it's fun because I have, for example, one class, the youngest student is 19 years old with huge back problems. The oldest student is 83 with some knee issues. And at the end, I don't want to say they do all the same. So one do preparations, one do use props, the other one can do the full asana. But I always say yoga is meant for the people and not the other way around. So you have to consider the state of body, the state of mind of your students. And so you can teach all in one class, but everybody gets something specific.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for explaining that. Yoga therapy is something I'm personally very interested in someday pursuing. In the States, it's quite expensive and it's long. I think it's like maybe 2 to 4 years long, depending on the program. But it's something I'm always interested in pursuing that education more. I guess I have so many questions, but let's start with how I know you talked a little bit about your family, when you decided to quit your other full-time job and decided to kind of pursue yoga. So what was their response, your family, friends? What was their response to you kind of making a full big switch in your career? And I guess like how old were your kids during this time? I'm curious about that too.
So to say like this, I don't want to insinuate anything, but to be honest, apart from my dad, who didn't start his own business until he was 50, and I was 45 at this time, and my daughter, she was, how old was she? 9 or something. And nobody really believed that it could be successful. But the interesting thing is that nobody really tried to talk me out of it because they all knew me too well for that. If I set my mind to something, I fight for it. But I think behind closed doors, they already had their doubts. So, and my ex-husband was, I say, supporting me. So he wanted to support me, but I think in his deepest inner, he didn't understood really what happened. And I think most of my friends, they thought she's crazy because I earned so much money. I have to say I earned so much money. And they just saw the fun thing, the traveling and all this, but it's not fun if you are traveling, having a little kid at home and always try to be a good mom, to be a good boss, to be a good wife, to be a good daughter, to be a good friend. And so you try to satisfy everybody around you, but you forget yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the fun thing was, so last year, when I was for 5 years self-employed, I made a little post. Mm-hmm. I'm never posting too much. And I just said, I thank everybody, especially those people who didn't have the faith in me, because you guys gave me the power to be there where I am now. And a few people came back and apologized and said, wow, we didn't thought you will make it. And we're happy you made it. And me too, to be honest.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad you pursued it, even if some people expressed that maybe you weren't going to make it, or maybe some people thought it wasn't going to be a right decision or path for you. I'm so glad that you listened to your heart and your intuition. And also congratulations on 5 years of being fully like independent.
Now it's 6, Rebecca. Now it's 6. It was last year. Now it's 6. It's more than 6 years now. Yeah, this year it's 6 years.
So amazing. And congratulations, because I know it's not easy at all. And you talked about kind of running your own business, and you talked a little bit about you teach private and you also teach group classes. So maybe share with me or the listeners, what is your different income streams of your business? I know you have private, you have group classes, and if there's anything else that you do. And do you work for other studios or gyms or other company, or is this everything you do on your own? Do you rent space? Do you have clients come to your home? How does your business model look like?
So I only teach on my own account. So that means I'm not employed anywhere or having a studio. I'm very, very lucky because I have nearby a very nice it's for 20 people room that I rent on an hourly base, and I only pay the hours I use it. So this is really luxury. And there I have my groups. When I do privates, I do them at home. I have a room where I can work with 1 or 2 people maximum. And I teach also some online classes. So since the pandemic, there are a few classes. They are still ongoing, which I'm very happy about. So it's like, it's online, it's having life in this room. And I never, as I said, I never was employed anywhere. It's everything I do by my own. But I have to say, and I think that's maybe important to know, that all my classes I have are certified by the German health insurance. And that means that the participants, so the students, can have the costs reimbursed as a prevention course. So not the whole thing, but I think until 80%. And the good thing is that not too many teachers in Germany have this, because it requires the qualifications of 500 hours teacher training. You have then to show 2,000 teaching hours. So it's a real hard process to go through and very time consuming to be at this point. And this is, I think, what gives me a little advantage maybe too. So that people come and say, oh, we want to book one class. So the classes are always a trimester. It's always 12 weeks. So they sign up for the 12 weeks. They pay the 12 weeks. They have to attend at least 80% of the time. And then they get the certification for their health insurance. So most of them start and say, oh, yeah, we do one course, and we get paid 80%. But I have students since 10 years coming the whole year, though they have to pay by themselves. And I think that's a great luck I had too.
Wow, I had no idea that is a thing in Germany. I don't know. I wonder if there's other country that does that, but that sounds amazing. And also, like, I wish United States had something like that, because we all know the benefits of yoga with people, aging population, or people with chronic pain, or, like, there's so much benefits to yoga. And I love that there's a certification or like a processing to make sure you are a legitimate teacher. You have a lot of trainings under your belt. You've taught 2,000 hours at least. And there's a process that you have to go through, because I think sometimes the doctor will say, oh, do yoga, it's going to be good for you. But then there's so many different types of yoga out there. There's so many different teachers out there. So I feel like that process that you have to go through will kind of streamline or make sure the good teachers who's been teaching for a long time with a really good education are the one who can offer that, I guess, discount from the health department of the government. That sounds amazing. And I wish the United States had something like that, because that'll actually it'll encourage more people to practice yoga who actually would benefit from that practice, but it also ensure that teachers can get paid well. Some people who can't afford it can still come, and you'll still make the money as a teacher. So anyway, sounds like such an amazing concept and program that I wish more countries could incorporate something like that. So that's amazing. And I'm curious, you said you rent a space. It's like hourly rate that you pay to rent a space to teach your group classes. And you do your own, like, you don't work for studio, so you are creating this own program. You're probably promoting it yourself, renting your own space. Two question is there other yoga studios nearby where you live that is kind of like maybe a competitor for you? Because I know you said you live in a smaller town, so maybe there aren't a lot of other options. And another question is, how do you find students? How do you recruit, or how do you promote? How do you let people know about you?
So there are a lot of studios around me, to be honest, and also a lot of teacher. And I know about one or two other who have the same qualification for the health insurance. But I think there are so many people around that want to practice yoga. And I always say, there's room for all of us, because every teacher is different and everybody has a certain point of view or a certain style. So I was never worried about this, but to be honest, I'm the longest in the place. And how do I get my students? So as you said correctly, I do everything by myself. So the marketing, the website, all the thing around like accounting, taxing, and all the stuff. And on the health insurance page, there is like a remark label that says, within so many miles, you have a teacher who is qualified and certified for this program. That's the one thing that people find me. I have to say that I have a lot of students, they started from day one with me and are still there. And then they bring their friend and their neighbor, and then they bring their husbands and they bring their kids. So it's like telling, I don't know how you say the correct English word for this. It's like
I think we say word of mouth, like people recommend you, this person recommend to you to the next person, it kind of spreads out to their network.
Exactly. So this is how it goes. And so that during this time, during the last 10 years, so my yoga students community, or however you want to name it, grow, and it's growing. And this is why I started a new class this September, because I didn't know how to teach them all.
Well, that's so amazing. I feel like word of mouth is the best marketing, best promotion is when people recommend you and it just starts to spread. So that's so wonderful to hear. And maybe can you share with us, what does your typical week look like? Like how many classes are you teaching, and how many of that is a private versus group versus online, and maybe even like admin hours that you have to do? So how does your typical work week look like?
So my typical work week at the moment is that I teach 5 weekly group classes, and 2 of them are still online. Then I have 3 corporate yoga classes. So the corporates coming and searching somebody for business yoga. This is also, so there are also a few big companies I'm still in. I have per week 2 or 3 private students that are coming. Then I'm leading 4 workshops a year, so every 3 months with a certain topic. I have 2 yoga retreats I'm leading here in Germany per year. So and all the other stuff around, like my webpage, the accounting, taxing, as I said, marketing, everything I do by myself. So it is a full-time job too. So I would say it's not less. But for me, the interesting part, it doesn't not feel like work as my old job. It always was heavy, and this is easy, maybe except of the office part. But this belongs to our job too.
Yeah, no, I totally get the whole office and admin computer work that kind of goes behind the scenes of yoga business owners. I'm sure I totally understand that. You said you teach some workshops and trainings. So I'm curious about the topic that you teach in this kind of special workshop. And do you think you have a specialty or niche in your teaching that you kind of specialize in?
So it is always different. It depends a little bit on the season, of course. So in spring, I mostly do like a twisting workshop. So it has always like a theme which correlate to the season. So in my 300-hour teacher training, Ayurveda was also a big part. So I'm not saying I'm an Ayurveda specialist, but as you know, yoga and Ayurveda go hand in hand. So this is what I'm looking for, what day of time, what season, what the needs. So I cannot say it's every time the same thing. Last weekend, I had my last workshop for this year, and that was the core. It was all about the core, and it was quite interesting. I don't want to say I have a special style to teach or a niche. What people say that I'm very alignment oriented, and people say, oh, she's very strict, but it's somehow funny. I think it's the thing between being serious on the yoga practice, but nevertheless not to take it too serious. So we are laughing a lot too during the classes. And I think this is what my students appreciate. This is maybe why they come and do the workshops.
Thank you. I love that you said like it's a seasonal themed workshops that you teach.
Yeah.
I think it's so nice when you can align it with the seasons and nature as well, kind of have a nice natural flow to it throughout the year. Another question I have is you told me that you experienced burnout yourself and you also became a like some kind of counselor or like a some what is it? Burnout.
It is called an expert for stress management and burnout prevention.
Okay.
So the interesting thing is where I graduated at this institute. After my graduation, the institute leader called me and said, could you imagine to work for us and lead the mindfulness and relaxing module, which is just one module in this whole training? And this is what I do besides maybe 3 or 4 times a year, having lectures for a weekend about these topics. So this is for this institute, I do this. And I'm invited also by companies to give lectures on topics like stress management or mindfulness or mental health or yoga or something like this. So my main business is yoga, but to teach yoga, but nevertheless, I'm always invited for a weekend or for a day or to do some lectures on those topics.
I think it's fascinating that you are expert in stress and burnout because in my world of living in LA and being a full-time yoga teacher is that yoga teachers are stressed out and experiencing burnout because we have to teach so many classes to make enough money to live, or we're driving from one part of town to another part of town, sitting in traffics, and we're stressed out, dealing with studio owners or clients or whatever it is. There's so much that goes into full-time yoga teaching that I think if you don't know too much about being a full-time yoga teacher from the outside, I think people think, oh, yoga teachers are so peaceful and so, this and that. But actually, I have experienced many, I wouldn't say many, but a few burnout myself. And I always catch myself getting too stressed out with my amount of work that I do as a yoga teacher. So I would love for you to share with the listeners, what are some things I think yoga teachers can do so we can avoid being burnt out from teaching so many classes or working too much? Or is there anything that you do particularly that helps you, or anything you want to share about burnout for yoga teachers specifically?
I think the first thing is really to be mindful about the process, because a burnout is nothing that comes from 1 second to another. It's like, it's growing. And we say in the burnout prevention, it's like a circle of 12 pieces. And I think we as yoga teacher know at least the best how to calm down. And I think what I faced with younger teachers, so I'm 51 in the meanwhile, and my body cannot do everything anymore than in the 20s or in the 30s, that many start to do, I would say, crazy asana sessions instead of listening to and sitting and maybe do pranayama, which is also an yoga practice. I think we have to give up the idea of how our practice has to look like, maybe. And I think also the most important thing is, as you described, Reka, that you had been a little bit nervous with the new studio and things like this, but we are all well educated, or the most of us. And so maybe we should have the self-awareness of, it's not just a job what we do, it's what we live. And I think if you live yoga really from the deepest of your heart with all the philosophy, the stress around maybe will not catch you so much. But I know, so there is no excuse. I know your rents. I know how much you have to pay for an apartment, which is crazy. So I would say in Germany, it's a little bit easier than in the States. And yeah, it's hard to answer. I think stay in your middle, be aware, and take your time off and do what you love. So what I mean is I love yoga, but at a certain point, I really lost the passion for it. And I really lost in the beginning of my yoga career. The pandemic came and stuff like this. So I had a divorce. And so I went through a whole bunch of things next to my self-employment. I wasn't able to do a yoga practice. And I'm really honest, I didn't had a yoga practice maybe for a month, but that helped me to focus on what was needed at this time. And at this time was needed pranayama. That was just sitting there and breathing and hoping it's getting better and not to lose the faith about what we are doing, because it's a great job what we are doing. And it's a gift to do what you love.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And I love the last line. It's a gift to be able to do what we love.
Mm.
And that's something I think about, try to think about, and do think about almost every day. It's like, what a privilege that I get to teach yoga every day. And what a privilege that I get to teach yoga and be my career path. I know some people, I have heard people say, I love yoga so much that I don't want it to become I don't want to rely my income on it. I just want to do it because I love it and that's it. And I totally respect that as well. But yeah, I try to remind myself what a privilege that I get to teach this practice and make this into my career. And also what a privilege to be able to practice yoga too. So kind of finding gratitude in that and think of it in like, wow, like how amazing that I get to do this. So I love what you said. Thank you. And you mentioned a little bit about pandemic. So maybe do you want to share a little bit of how pandemic affected your business? How was it during the pandemic? And also if your teaching or business model slightly shifted since the pandemic, I would love to hear that as well.
So the pandemic on the one hand side was a really nightmare, but a stroke of luck for me from a professional perspective. So I have to say that my ex-husband split up with me just under a year after I became self-employed. So because he couldn't cope with my yoga and my change. But I did yoga before we knew each other. So I think that was not the real reason. So, however, he moved out 5 days before the first lockdown. So and I was suddenly alone with my then 11-year-old daughter and could not teach any longer. And to be honest, I was really panicked. I was paralyzed for 3 days. And then I had the idea to teach online. So, and I set up everything within a weekend. That was from Friday to Sunday. And Sunday night, I wrote to all my participants and companies that we will continue doing yoga from Monday on, but online on a live stream. So, and I think in this time, because I had this health insurance thing, the people stayed home and they had also reduced salaries. But if the health insurance company gives you some money for a prevention course, it was easier for them. And I think maybe I lost 4 people in that time. And I had one man class. It was just men and just senior citizens. And all of them made their sons, their grandsons, their neighbors, helped them to set up the technical part. And I didn't lose anybody from these guys. And the oldest had been 84 at this time. So I gained also a few men to this. That's just a little side story. So I would say maybe I lost 4 or 5 people and gained about 25 new ones. And it was like building up an online community because suddenly I had people from all over Germany or far away. So nobody will drive for a 90 minutes lesson to come here. And this is the reason why I still have 2 online classes I teach, because many of these students stayed with me and they're not living nearby. So there's no way they could come in a group class. And this is why I still have these online classes. And the good thing is, sometimes I also get sick. So knock on wood, it's not very often, but if you have a cold or something, you don't want to stay in front of your students, then I say, oh, guys, sorry, today we will do online, because they're used to it. They did it 2.5 or 3 years with me. So this is how it changed. No, I'm going back more to live classes again, but those 2 online classes still stay.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I also started teaching online during the pandemic, like many yoga teachers during that time. But I'm also continuing to teach my online classes on top of the in-person classes that I teach now, because my online students are willing to continue online. And I just think it's such a nice addition for a lot of people to have the option to be able to continue practicing online, especially if they live far away from you, or some in the LA, sometime commuting, just driving to your studio and finding parking can take a really long time. So it's nice you can just turn on your computer from your home and be able to practice.
And I think the nice thing is, but because what we want, or what I want, is that they do practice yoga not just once a week on their mat. And now it's so common that you just roll out your mat wherever you are and do yoga by yourself. And sometimes they wrote me, oh, I just rolled out my mat and did some yoga for myself. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what it should be. It's not only once a week. It could become something regular on your own base. It's not necessary to be instructed. So just 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the great thing. I think that was the great thing with the pandemic, because people started to do it by themselves too. So getting yoga a little bit more into their life, which is great.
So great. Yeah, that is such a good point. And I know you said that in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a huge shift in your family with separating with your then husband and then still living and taking care of your kids. That must have been a very, stressful time, adjust to the new transition, as well as the pandemic, as well as like trying to shift your business models around. So it must have been a really challenging time. And I want to ask, when I have a interview with yoga teachers who also have children or family, I'm always curious what are some challenges that you have overcome, or what are some tips you may have of finding a balance of being a mother and, mother to your children and taking care of them, but then also running this full-time yoga business.
So to say, and though I'm running a full-time yoga business, I have much more time for my daughter than I had in the past with my old job. And what I really, really, really appreciate is that I'm home when she's coming from school, so that we are having lunch together. And I have the feeling I still have more time with her than I had in the past. The challenging thing in the past was, or in the beginning, when she was younger and smaller, that I always needed somebody to take care about her in the evening when I was teaching. So my parents helped out. I have really great neighbors that helped out. It was not always easy, but I think if you do what you really love, it makes it easier. And one sentence that she said to me, and that really made me cry when I was homesick before I started, before I quit my job and before I started my business. And she said to me, Mom, it's so nice you are not so much yelling anymore on me. And I was so shocked, and I was like, I felt so bad, because I never was aware about yelling up on her, but I was so stressed this time. It's stressful too, what I'm doing now, but I think it's much easier. So if your family feels, and my daughter feels, that I'm happy with what I'm doing, nevertheless, it's in the evenings or stuff like this. I think she grew in with it. She always says, Mama, I'm happy that you are happy. I think it sounds stupid. Maybe it's easier to be a single mom than when you're still having a husband or a partner with you, so that there's only the kid that needs you. But in a whole family, there are more kids, or the husband, and everybody needs something of you. So it makes it easier for me, to be honest. It's not always easy to take care about everything, but I'm lucky she's 15 now. So she's going her own ways already. It's making it easier for me. But the first years, it had been challenging. But as I said, when I started my business, the pandemic was, and I was at home. I was teaching online. So she was upstairs. I was downstairs. I was just away for 90 minutes, and she did her homework, but she knew I was around. So I would say, with all the situation, so if I'm thinking about it, how crazy it was always something good in it. And maybe I was very lucky that everything came to the right time.
I love hearing that. I love that how your daughter said, I am happy that you're happy now. Like, I think it reminded me of a quote from Krishnamacharya when his student asked him, how do I know if my yoga practice is getting better? And Krishnamacharya answered, your yoga practice is getting better, not when your poses, your asana practice improves, but when your relationship starts to improve. So I think when you're practicing your yoga and living your yoga, like you said, it starts to have effect on the relationship with your close one around you. And then, that kind of goes out to your neighbors, your acquaintances, whatever. So your daughter can see that you're probably more like glowing. You're much more in this, like you're trusting and following your heart, and you're happier. And she can see that, and that's going to have obviously a positive impact on her. And for her to see her mother following her heart and her dreams and doing what she loves, I think it's such an important thing for her to see. And as she grow up, I'm curious, does she practice yoga, or is she?
No, no. She should have, because she had a real heart surgery in 2020 on her spine. That was also something extra. So that means during the pandemic, we got the diagnosis that she needed this real heart surgery. She should do yoga for her core, but she doesn't do it. And I do not force her. So it's maybe when she grow up and will become older, she will see the value of it, but not as a teenager, I think.
I love what you said. You don't force her to, but I'm sure for her to see her mother practicing yoga, teaching yoga day in, day out, that is already probably having some kind of influence on her. And then you never know, once she gets older, she might be like, okay, maybe I want to try this yoga thing. I think without forcing it, like there's already, I think, a much positive impact and influence it's having on her. So that's so great to hear. And do you have any tips or advice that you would give to a yoga teachers who is maybe starting out on the journey of teaching, or starting out on a journey of full-time yoga teaching? For you, you started your own independent business. So maybe even advice on like somebody who's trying to make their yoga teaching into their business rather than just working for somebody else, but like creating their own yoga business. So do you have any tips, advice for yoga teachers who are kind of just starting out?
So I really think the most important is that you just have faith in the higher. It sounds stupid, but this is what is our foundation of yoga. It's not only asana practicing. So also, if life brings you hurdles, everything that comes into your life is only for your own good. And it's really important to follow your heart and your path and the path of your soul. So if you decide to be a yoga teacher, just really go for it. Trust in it. Do your best, and be self-confident. And I would say in the beginning, as I did it, maybe do not quit your job immediately. So as when I did my teacher training, I just had those classes besides, and then I had my job. And okay, then my illness came and I needed to change my complete life. But I think it should be a path too. It's nothing you do immediately from A to B. So take your time. I think it's all about experience. Start with what you love, and then you can reduce it step by step. Or I don't know how the community, the yoga community in the US works. And unfortunately, in Germany, we have a yoga scene, which is a pity. So I think it's a pity that everybody tries to do stuff by their own. So get together, find teacher that you can make something together, or that matches, you know what I mean? I think we are learning so much from each other. So every day. And I think that the best thing is just to build up a community and with your family around and your friends. So you need the support from outside, and then just follow your heart. Go for it.
Thank you for that. I love it. Follow your heart. And I know you said having faith, and I love that. Faith is something I think about a lot more recently. So yeah, definitely love everything you said. And what do you find it most challenging about being a full-time yoga teacher? And then what do you love the most about being a full-time yoga teacher?
So what I really love the most is it sounds stupid, but to be my own boss, to be honest, and to organize my time more or less freely during the week. So, for example, I had been teaching this morning, and I had the possibility to meet a friend I haven't seen for months, and we just went out for breakfast. That's so luxury. So to be freely with your time. And as I said, I really appreciate to be home when my daughter is here. And I think the most challenging thing for me is the office work, because it reminds me on the old thing I did for nearly 25 years in the travel industry, the whole stuff around it. But it's a part to it too. It's like one of the cliches. You don't want to have it, rajas. So go through it and do it. And this is done too. But I really did what I love most is to work with the people. And what I really, really love is to learn. I never stopped learning. So I still attend trainings, teacher trainings or workshops by myself. And I think we can learn so much from our students, and we can learn so much from other teachers. And I think teaching and learning goes hand in hand. And that's for me so important, because every day is different. And what I know and what I feel in my heart, I always remain a student. I always will remain a student until the end of my days. I think this passion, this is what I love most when teaching yoga.
Thank you. Oh, I love that. Always remaining a student. I think it's something I really find huge importance in, for me to continue learning, never stop learning, and being the student of yoga first before a teacher. I feel like I'm always going to be a student first. So I love everything you shared. And I just have a couple more questions before we wrap up. What does success mean to you as a yoga teacher?
Success, that's quite easy to answer. So maybe a lot of people would answer success with earning a lot of money or stuff like this. So I think my success is if the people go out of my class and they have the special glow in their face, and they had maybe a bad day, and they say, well, after the class, I feel so much better than before. I guess this is what I would say. It's my success, because I know I have contributed something meaningful to my people around me, and that's somehow my reward. I would say that's success.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you for that. And I'm sure your students are very, very grateful to have you to be able to contribute to, something, improving even just a tiny bit of their day or their mood or their physical health. So, and what do you see yourself as a full-time yoga teacher, or where do you see your business kind of going in the future? Do you have any direction you want to go towards, or is there a goal that you have, or yeah, anything like that? Where do you see your business going in the future?
Okay, so if I've been working with people for many years who have serious health problems, so physically and mentally, I guess that my field of activity will probably continue to expand in this direction. So this is what I think. And the other thing is that I really love to travel. So that is what I had as a kid. Maybe therefore I choose the job in the travel industry. So I also love the combination of traveling and yoga. And now that my daughter is getting old enough and going her own way, I can maybe concentrate more and more on expanding my yoga retreats and offering them also abroad and also teach abroad when the opportunity arises. And I would love to work with other teachers. As I said, it's an enrichment to learn with and from each other and also from our students. So I don't really have a goal. I would say the goal I would love to teach yoga as long as I can. And always, and this is important for me, always with the awareness that I will be a student until the end, because the path never ends. And I'm just curious what will happen. So I'm open. It's just like letting it into my life, open my heart, open my arms, and embrace whatever comes. But my goal would be to travel again more and teach yoga and combine it. And let's see if this will happen.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I love it. Is there anything, any questions that I didn't ask that you want to share with the listeners, or any last words before I ask you where they can find you, all that? But is there anything else that you want to, any last words you want to share with the listeners?
I think important is, as a yoga teacher, as I said, never stop learning. Trust into your path, because it's a path. It's not by accident that we took this way. We don't do it just because it's fun. I think if we see that the asanas, and this is unfortunately what's here in Germany, it's a lot of teaching of asanas, but it's not yoga. It's not only yoga. I think the component of yoga for me are the yamas and niyamas. And for me, it's the foundation of the whole practice. And if we could honor these ethics as we progress along our ways, our paths, and meaning to be mindful of each action we take, or cultivating more presence or more aware state of being. So, I think it's not only about stretching and strengthening and expanding our bodies, but it's also to do it with our mind, with our heart too. And that makes us maybe, and also the world around us, to be a better place. And I think we never should forget what we are teaching and why we are teaching, and just be trustful in what we do and love what we do. And I think if we love what we do, happiness will come into our life and it will become easier. Yeah, as I said, it's yoga transforms not only the body, but your heart, your mind, your soul.
So beautifully said. Thank you. Oh my goodness, Claudia. That was such a beautiful way to kind of end this conversation. That was just like I couldn't have said it better. So that was so beautiful and also inspiring. And I think it gives us like, for me listening, and hopefully all the listeners listening, little like a little juice and little inspiration to kind of keep us moving forward. So thank you so much. can you share with the listeners how they can find you, how they can reach out to you, or if there's any specific offering you have you want to share with everyone, feel free to share with us.
So I have, of course, my yoga web page. I have an Instagram account, quietly new, because my daughter told me, Mama, you have to have this. So I am there maybe since a few weeks, not very active. But they can send me an email. They can go on my website. So we are now in the middle of translating it also into English. So at the moment it's only on German, but the program. So we're working on an English version. And just send me a mail and get in touch with me. I'm happy to answer your question, or to get into connection, to build up, as I said, a community, not a scene. So let's start and work together and go hand in hand and do good for the people around.
Yes, I can't agree with you more. So thank you. I'll definitely link all your website and all of that on the show notes. Thank you so much, Claudia, for this conversation. I'm so glad that we got to meet at Live Meta Studio in Laguna Beach that one day, and now we can continue to kind of, keep the connection going. So thank you so much for your...
Thank you so much, and hopefully see you next year again in life at Live Meta.
Yes, me too. I look forward to it.
We are planning to come again. So thank you so much for this very nice interview. You make a great job. It's so nice how you ask the question with so much heart. And I wish you all the best and a lot of success with what you do. You're a great person. Thank you, Reika. Nice that we met.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with Claudia. I really loved having this conversation with her. First of all, I was so amazed to learn that in Germany, insurance can subsidize your yoga classes if you register. I think if you can register yourself as certified and experienced yoga teacher. I think that is so amazing, and I wish the United States can do something like that. That will create more jobs for yoga teachers, more accessibility for people to take yoga class that can hopefully benefit them in their health. And also, I like that there was a requirement. You have to have 2,000 hours of teaching, I believe, and you have to have 500-hour certification. So there was some more criteria to be able to for you to be able to register yourself as a health insurance provider, I guess. So I thought that was really cool. If you know any program that does something like this, let me know, because I would love to know. And I hope one day United States can also offer something like this and actually recognize yoga teachers as a professional healthcare provider. Hopefully it's going towards that direction, especially with yoga therapy. It seems like there's a lot more movement towards really recognizing that profession in the healthcare world. But that was so fascinating. And also hearing her journey of quitting her full-time job and starting her own business. That was so inspiring to me. So thank you, Claudia, for coming on. And I hope I get to see you next year again in Laguna Beach or Laguna Niguel when you come back to visit California. Hopefully we can hang out, see each other. So that is it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Please reach out to me anytime you want with questions or comments about the podcast. My handle on Instagram is @ReikaYoga. My website is www.reikayoga.com. And I would really appreciate it if you're listening to this on Spotify to make a 5-star review. You don't even have to write anything. You just have to click 5 stars. And that's going to help my show so much. If you're listening on any other platform besides Spotify, you can still leave me a 5-star review or even just 5-star rating. That would be very much helpful and a free, easy, simple way to help support this podcast. So that is it for now, and I will speak to you next week. Have a great day.